Hello, everyone. This is Coach Mitch, and I hope you watched my previous video, Takes, KAPOW. A capture is a forcing move because it forces your opponent to recapture, or else he'll just lose a piece. Another forcing move is a check. Today's lesson is called Check, Escape, KAPOW. First, we'll look at a review of Takes, KAPOW, and then we'll move on. Now, let's look at this position. It's white to play. He has two captures. He can capture the E pawn with the knight. It's protected by the black knight. He could also capture the black knight with the bishop, but that's protected by two different pawns. So none of the captures seem to make sense. Well, none of them seem to win material. But if you look a little deeper, if you capture the knight first, takes, he must capture the bishop or else he'll be down a knight. So you capture it, and then it doesn't matter which way he takes. There's the KAPOW of knight takes pawn. By the way, that tactic is called removing the guard, where you capture the piece that's doing the protecting, and then you capture the treasure. I got me treasure. Okay, so we're going to go on. That was takes, KAPOW. We're just going to flip back. And today we're going to do something called check, escape, KAPOW. That means you check the opponent. He has to stop what he's doing. He's in check. He can't checkmate you. So he has to get out of check, and then you do the KAPOW. We'll go through a few simple positions, and then it'll get a little bit more complicated. In here, it's black to play. He wants to capture the knight, but the king protects it. So what you do is you check first, he must escape, and then there's the KAPOW. And now, not only are you up a knight, but you actually have a really annoying attack against the king with the rook and queen combining. I think the game won't last that much longer. That was a check, escape, KAPOW. Again, you calculate your check, your opponent's options to escape, and then your strongest power move on move 2. So let's go to the next one. This is white to play. White has 3 pieces near the king, another piece about to join. The pawn protects the bishop. Black has several pieces defending, but remember, pieces are very clumsy when they defend. They're much more agile when they attack. Here, white looks like he can just take the knight, but it's protected by the, let's put it back, it's protected by the king and the queen. 1 attacker, 2 defenders. But if you check, let's queen h8 check, I'm going to take it back. Imagine queen h8 check. The only legal move for black is to move the king to e7. And now do you see what he can do? Right, he can take the knight with check. So I'm just going to put those moves in now. Check, escape, KAPOW. And not only did you win a knight, but the 2 bishops, the queen, and the rook coming down should checkmate black pretty quickly. So the game should end fairly quickly. He'll either checkmate the king or win a lot more material. I actually think that's better in this position than taking the rook. Well, for one thing, he can take your bishop. And it's not clear what's going on. So it's much better to take the knight. And then I can't imagine black escaping this. For instance, you can play rook check. And when he blocks, well, you can just trade off a lot of things and you'll be doing very well. You can just play rook takes rook check and you'll win the guys. He must take. And then you don't even take the queen. You give checkmate. Maybe I missed something. The key thing was the first two moves, the check, escape, kapow. Let's do the next one. So this is a game from Bobby Fischer on his road to the World Championship. Fischer was black, and white said, hey, I can win this pawn on f6. It's not protected, it's hanging. And that's what white did, but he really shouldn't have done that. He should have looked ahead and said, hey, white now has a fork with the queen. He can go to d4. I'm going to put it back. And when the queen moves to d4, not only is it check, but he's attacking the rook. I don't think Taimanov, who was white in this position, saw that. And if he did, maybe he thought he can just move the rook back to f2 to block. But in that position, there was a kapow. It's a little tricky to see, so I'll put the moves on the board. So it was he took, which was a mistake. There was the check. Again, if he just moves the king, you take the rook. So he blocks with the rook, and it seems like everything's protected. But then there's another kapow, and this is another check kapow. And then when he escapes, there's another kapow. And then I think Taimanov resigned after rook a1 check. And Fischer won the 5th game in a row, and he went on to win the match 6-0 on his road to the World Championship. Let's look at another one. This is Garry Kasparov as white. Typically for Kasparov, he's down material, but his pieces are all buzzing around the king. He has 1, 2, 3 pieces attacking the black king, and there's only the king and rook defending. These guys are far away, although this queen is tricky. So it looks to me that white has a really good attack, but it takes calculation to make sure it works. For instance, I'm going to go through one, take, check, escape, kapow. That doesn't work. There's check, and when he takes, this is going to lead to mate. So it looks like that looks like the right answer. A lot of times when you have a position where you see the win, don't play it immediately. Just make sure it's correct before you do it. For instance, here, instead of king to g8, there's actually a better move for black. Do you see it? Right. Queen takes queen. And then you just threw away the win. So it's actually hard to see those kind of moves when the queens go back diagonally. So let's look again. Is there another check? Well, there's knight to f7 check. I'm not going to make the move. I'll just put an arrow there. And then the king has no escape because the rook takes away the g file, but the black rook can capture the knight. And in that position, there's a kapow. I'm going to get rid of the arrows, and let's see if you can do this without me moving the pieces for now. Let's see what happens after knight f7, rook takes knight. Do you see the kapow? Well, the kapow, believe it or not, is queen to b8 check. Remember, the knight's not there anymore. And black can block for a couple of moves, but he's going to get checkmated. Now I'll play the moves out on the board. Knight check. The only escape is here. And then this is the kapow. Again, black can throw pieces in, but they're just going to be taken off. And it'll be checkmate. This is checkmate, as a matter of fact. We just have a few more. Okay, this again is black to play. Well, the first move you would look at, and I'll play it because this is not the right move, is queen to h1 check. And now he can block, but that's pretty silly. But the king can go to g3, and there's not going to be a forced mate. Or actually, there is, but only if you go back to the position and find the right move. So I'm just going to go back. And the key is on queen h1 check, the king can move to g3. So that gives you a hint what the right move is. If you need to pause, please pause. Okay, I hope you paused. The right move is queen to e1 check. And then the only escape is queen to g3. So that in that position, do you see the KAPOW? Well, in that position, queen to h1, I'm going to get rid of all the arrows. Queen to h1 is checkmate. I can't put an arrow there. I don't know why. So let's go through it again. Queen e1 check first. The queen blocks and takes away the only escape square for the king. And so this will be checkmate very soon. He must block. And then you give checkmate. Garry Kasparov, oops, I hope you didn't see my hair, the world champion 1985 to 2000. Okay, so in this position, black has 4 pieces around the white king. White has a king and 2 pieces, and believe it or not, this bishop is very annoying. Materials is equal, but this pawn, a pawn on the 7th rank, is sometimes worth a rook, sometimes worth even more. So again, examine every check. Well, this check looks pretty cool. But then I don't think there's going to be a win. I think the king will squirt away. And you've given away a very important tool, that pawn. So let's look at queen f1 check. Notice this knight here. The only legal move is bishop takes queen. And then do you see the checkmate? Okay, I hope you did. Let's go through it. Queen f1 check, bishop takes queen, and then pawn takes bishop, checkmate. The queen is protected by the bishop. The knight takes away the e3 square, and the queen so close up does, takes away most of the escape squares. The pawns take away these squares. So that's checkmate. I'm just going to put everything back. And now let's see if you can see it in your head without me moving the pieces. Imagine black playing queen f1 check. White has to play bishop takes queen. And then do you see the checkmate? Well, it was pawn takes bishop equals queen. And where can black go? Well, why not e3? Oh no, there's a knight there. So that's checkmate. I'll go through it one more time to make sure you see it. If you can't, you can just repeat. Repeat the video, put it on pause, go through it again. I think just a couple more. So in this position, it is white to play. Black just captured a hanging e-pawn. And this piece is not protected. And do you remember what we call an unprotected piece? A loose piece. And what happens to loose pieces? Loose pieces drop off. That means unprotected pieces have a tendency to be vulnerable to a tactic. Not always, but for instance, if I just attack the knight, he'll just run away. And black is up a pawn, and it has a solid position, should be favored in this position. White doesn't have enough compensation for the pawn. Again, if I attack it once, he just runs away. If I attack the king and only the king, well, he just blocks the check. But if I can attack 2 things, the king and the pawn, with a check, give a check, and there's a check, escapes, and a KAPOW, that'll help you find it. Do you see the move? Well, it's queen a4 check. From a4, not only does it give check, but it also attacks the knight. And the knight can't help. And the knight can get no help. So what's going to happen is you'll give check, he'll escape by blocking, and then you'll just capture the knight. I'll show it to you now. Check, escape, you could also block with the bishop or the queen, KAPOW. There's going to be one more like that. So in this position, it is black to play. I hope I never misspoke earlier where I said it was white to play and it was really black. But in this position, it's definitely black to play. Do you see a check? Well, I see one check. I see queen a5 check. And when he escapes, do you see the kapow? For instance, queen a5 check, bishop d2. Do you see the kapow? Right, this is just like before. You take the loose piece. Loose pieces drop off. Check, escape, kapow. And if you blocked with the knight to protect the bishop, well, that's okay, except I just take the knight then. And this is going to be pretty good for black. I think he's up a bishop. I don't know, maybe you go here or here. And then eventually he'll have to finish developing. Black is definitely for choice at the master level. Black is winning. I think there's just one more position we're going to go through. And this was actually the position we had in the last lesson, where white did a takes, escape, kapow. By the way, it was actually a check. It was a takes, kapow. It was also a check, escape, kapow, where he wanted to play knight f7 with the fork, but black did a check, escape, kapow to get out of it. So instead, the correct move was white playing, let's go back one more, queen takes rook check, escape, and then when you play the kapow move, it's a check so that black doesn't have time to move his queen out of the way. He must get out of check, and then you just take the queen. Let's go back. Because it's really cool is with black to play, he has his own check, escape, kapow. I'm going to give white a move. I'm just going to give him this move. So now it's black to play. Now black may have noticed, oh my goodness, he could have taken the rook before and then forked me with the knight. Oh, I got out of that. Let's just pin the knight and let's see, oh good, I escaped. And that's good. And again, when you see a good move, what should you do? Look for a better one. And you look for forcing moves, you look for captures, but no capture looks great. Rook takes pawn, so everything looks protected, and that's like the only capture I could see. But there are checks. Well, I could check this way, he just takes it. I could check here, he just gets out of the way. But there's one other check, do you see it? Right, the move c3 check. And that's really annoying because not only are you checking the king, but you're also attacking the queen. A double attack, a pawn fork. So he must capture it. Now, if he captures with the queen, there's one kapow. And if he captures with the king, there's another kapow. I'm actually going to put the move back so that I want you to picture the move with c3 check on the board. Black taken with the king first. Do you see the kapow? Don't worry, if you don't see it, I'm going to go through it and then I'll give you another chance. The kapow is knight to e4 check, forking the king and queen. I'll go through it. Again, this will be the position we look at again. If he takes with the king, there's this kapow with a fork on the king and queen. When the king gets out of check, you capture the queen. And you're up a lot of material at the master level. White would resign. Because you don't resign, just keep playing. But this is a pretty miserable way to continue the game if you're white. But you just got to fight with what you have. So let's go back. And on c3, what if he takes with the queen? So now imagine black playing c3 check. Queen takes c3. Do you see the kapow? I'll make it a little bit easy for you. c3 check. Queen takes c3. So the king is here, the queen is there. Do you see the kapow? Right, knight a4 check, forking the king and the queen. When the king gets out of check, you capture the queen. Let's get rid of the arrows, and now I'll do it again. Check. Again, if he plays king takes, you play knight e4. If he plays queen takes, you play knight a4. When the king gets out of check, you take the queen, and even if he captures your queen, your knight, I should say, well, then I think you're up a lot of material. Maybe you can pin the knight. I think I would pin the knight. Maybe you could get the rook, start bringing the rook over, not that, start bringing the rook over to attack. But you're up, looks like you're up a queen for a knight, and that's a pretty big advantage. Well, I hope you liked this lesson. Look for more tactics lessons on Chess Coach Mitch. Thank you, and have a nice day.